King Theobald Carrick gave Margot Fenley a prison cell for refusing to open a death door. He did it in the central yard of Blackbarrow Royal Prison, beneath a moon so thin it looked like a blade drawn across the clouds. Margot did not fight the guards. That disappointed the crowd. Prisoners watched from barred galleries. Soldiers stood along the black stone wall with execution lanterns burning at their feet. Warden Edric Solm held the king's order in one gloved hand, clean as snow, though it carried 6 names scheduled for death before dawn. Blackbarrow's death door was not a metaphor. At dawn, the keeper's key opened the iron passage between the lower cells and the execution yard. No prisoner crossed it unless the moon iron chains accepted the conviction record as true. Margot knew every name on Edric's order. Not as friends. Never that. She had managed Blackbarrow too long to confuse fairness with softness. She knew which prisoners lied badly, which verdicts arrived too clean, and which witnesses spoke like men repeating words bought for them. The 6 named for dawn had been condemned under the newly revised treason law. That was the problem, not because treason was harmless, because Margot had asked 3 times to see the original law in its first hand, and 3 times Edric's office had returned only the copied revision with the crown seal pressed hard enough to bruise the parchment. "Keeper Fenley," Edric said, voice carrying through the yard, "you are commanded to prepare the condemned." Margot stood with her iron ring of keys at her belt. "I was commanded to execute 6 prisoners under a law I have not been allowed to read in its original hand." A murmur passed through the galleries. Edric's face stayed calm. Men who built injustice out of paperwork often were. The law bears the crown seal. The altered copy bears the crown seal. Theobald's grey eyes sharpened from the yard steps. He wore black wolf fur over his shoulders, rain silvering the ends, the old moon crowned dark against his hair. Once, after a riot in this same yard, he had told Margot she had the only spine in Blackbarrow that did not bend toward cruelty. "Tell me when command becomes injustice, Margot." He had meant it then. That was what made this worse. Edric turned toward the king. "Majesty, this hesitation endangers royal authority. If jailers choose which sealed law to obey, Blackbarrow becomes a council of keys." Margot looked at Theobald, not Edric. "If kings stop reading what they sign, Blackbarrow becomes a grave with clerks." The yard went silent. Theobald descended 1 step. "Careful," he said. The word was low, almost private. She hated that it still knew how to reach her. Margot lifted her chin. "You once asked me not to be careful when justice was at stake." His jaw tightened. Edric lowered his voice, making himself sound reluctant. "She is defying the crown in front of prisoners already eager to mistake mercy for weakness." A prisoner shouted from the upper gallery. A guard struck the bars with a spear shaft, and the sound cracked the night. Theobald did not look away from Margot. "Did you refuse the execution order?" "Yes." "Did you withhold the condemned from the death passage?" "Yes." "Did you tell the lower keepers that obedience without conscience is butchery?" Margot's hands went still at her sides. "Yes." Edric's eyes cooled with satisfaction. Theobald's face hardened around something that might have been pain if he had allowed it to live. "You leave me no choice." "No," Margot said. "I left you the choice you taught me to protect." For one breath, the old Blackbarrow chains shifted on the walls. Not loudly, just enough that every prisoner heard metal remember the moon. The moon iron chains had hung in Blackbarrow since the first Wolf Kings built the prison under a bloodless moon. They did not decide mercy, they did not forgive crimes. But old law said moon iron could feel false testimony when it touched a conviction record. True guilt sat heavy. False witness made the metal restless. Edric had called that old superstition for years. Until tonight, Theobald had never needed to choose whether he agreed. The chain nearest Margot's hand gave a soft silver tremor. Edric saw it. His voice sharpened. "Majesty." Theobald looked toward the chain, then back to Margot. He should have ordered the original law brought. He should have opened 1 death record before signing 6 lives toward dawn. He should have remembered the woman he had trusted when trust cost nothing. Instead, he took Edric's parchment. "Margot Fenley," Theobald said, "you are removed from keeper authority and confined for royal defiance until sentence review." "Sentence review after execution?" she asked. The words struck harder because they were plain. Theobald's eyes flickered. "Not enough." Edric handed the guards a spare cell key. Lower East Block, empty murder cell. Margot gave a quiet laugh. Edric looked displeased. You find imprisonment amusing? No, she said. I find it familiar. Men always choose an old cage when a woman's conscience becomes inconvenient. The guards took her keys. That hurt more than the shackles. Those keys had been weight, duty, and warning for 14 years. She had used them to lock dangerous people away and to open doors only after the law had finished speaking. She had never treated them as power, only responsibility. Theobald watched the iron ring leave her belt. His hand moved once at his side, as if memory wanted him to stop it. He did not. Good, Margot thought. Let the knight keep an honest record of what he chose. They locked her in the lower East Block, in a cell that smelled of wet stone and old verdicts. Across the corridor, 3 of the condemned sat, chained for dawn preparation. A seamstress whose brother had served the wrong house, a carter who had delivered grain under forced receipt, and an old scribe who had copied a letter he had not written. Margot stood behind bars with no keys. Theobald remained outside her cell. Only he and Edric had followed her down. Ask for the original law, she said. Theobald's voice was rough. Do not make this harder. She stepped closer to the bars. I am not making it harder. I am refusing to make it clean. Edric said, Majesty, dawn comes soon. Theobald looked at Margot for a long moment. Then he turned away. The corridor torches bent toward the floor as he left. At midnight, the prison bell struck once. The moon iron chains answered. Not from Margot's cell. From the lower East Block, silver links shivered through the corridor. They did not free Blackbarrow. They did not forgive crime. They answered only the 6 death records prepared for dawn. But around the 6 execution cells emptied for dawn preparation, the chains tightened until the stone cracked. Inside each cell lay a conviction record bearing Warden Edric Solm's seal. Edric did not deny the moon iron chains had tightened around his records. He denied what old metal could judge. Moon iron feels false testimony, Majesty, he said in the lower East corridor, while stone dust fell from the 6 execution cells. Not lawful revision, not wartime necessity, not treason law. Theobald stood between Margot's locked cell and the cracked execution cells, his black wolf fur damp from the midnight mist rolling through the prison vents. Margot watched him from behind the bars. No keys, no authority. Still the only person in the corridor who had refused to make death look orderly. The 6 conviction records lay inside the empty preparation cells, each bearing Edric Solm's seal. Moon iron chains had wrapped around the records instead of the prisoners, digging into stone as if paper could bleed. Theobald's voice stayed cold. Why did the chains tighten around records instead of wrists? Edric bowed slightly. Because Keeper Fenley disturbed the death door rite. The condemned were moved out of their cells before the moon iron accepted the final passage. Empty cells confuse old law. Margot gave a short, quiet laugh. Theobald looked at her. She did not soften it. Blackbarrow has executed through riot, plague, siege, and winter flood. Its chains have never confused a record with a wrist. Edric turned toward her with calm disappointment. You have already shown willingness to place your conscience above the crown. Now you interpret prison relics to justify defiance. Margot stepped closer to the bars. Ask why sentence review was placed after dawn. Theobald's jaw tightened. Edric answered first. Review follows execution when royal security is at risk. Dead traitors cannot organize rescue. 1 seamstress, Margot said. 1 carter, 1 old scribe. If that is your conspiracy, Warden, your kingdom is made of paper and fear. A condemned woman across the corridor began to cry silently. Theobald heard it. His eyes moved toward her cell, then back to the records. Bring the original treason law, he said. Edric's face remained composed. Majesty, the emergency revision is the active law. I asked for the original. It is archived in the upper legal vault. Then wake the vault. A guard moved. Edric's voice sharpened just enough. Dawn comes soon. Theobald looked at him. Then walk faster. For one breath, Margot saw the king she had once trusted beneath the crown. Then he turned back to her, and the wound returned. This does not clear you, he said. No, Margot answered. It only proves you should have asked before you chained me. The words struck him. He accepted them badly, which meant he accepted them at all. A guard entered Margot's cell carrying a set of prisoner shackles. Edric gestured toward her wrists. Until the law is reviewed, she remains confined under guilty custody. Margot extended her hands, not because she consented, because she would not let them say she flinched. The guard lifted the shackles. The moon iron chains along the corridor went still. Then one silver link uncurled from the wall, slid through the bars, and wrapped itself around the cell door. The guard stopped. "Fasten them," Edric said. The guard tried. The prisoner shackles snapped open before touching Margot's skin and fell to the floor with a sound like a verdict refusing its own ink. The silver link across her cell door brightened, not freeing her, not crowning her innocent, guarding the threshold. Margot looked at Theobald. "It will hold me in. It will not let you name me guilty." Theobald's face changed by almost nothing. Almost. Edric spoke quickly. A prison relic responding to a former keeper. Attachment, perhaps. Habit. She carried those keys for years. "Moon. Iron does not have favorites," Margot said. "Only standards." Theobald looked toward the cracked execution cells. "Who sealed each death record?" Edric inclined his head. "All execution records pass through the warden's office. My seal proves custody, not corruption." "Were the 6 condemned by proven intent?" Edric paused. "Only briefly." Margot caught it. The chains answered before the court could pretend not to hear it. A low silver tremor moved through the corridor. Theobald caught it last. "Were they condemned by proven intent?" he repeated. Edric's voice smoothed. "They were condemned under the revised standard." "That is not an answer," Margot said. The guard returned with a black wooden law case, dust clinging to its wolf claw hinges like old ash. The old royal seal had cracked at one corner, but the parchment inside was still whole, written in a hand older than Theobald's reign. Theobald opened it himself. Edric watched with perfect calm. Too perfect. The prison seemed to lean inward. Even the condemned stopped breathing loudly. Theobald read the first paragraph in silence. Then the second. His eyes stopped at the execution clause. Margot did not ask what it said. She already knew what it should have said. The moon iron chains tightened around the 6 death records until the stone groaned. Theobald lifted the parchment into the moonlight. The old ink brightened. Original treason law. Intent required before death sentence. The old parchment did not accuse anyone. That made it more dangerous. It simply lay in Theobald's hands beneath the thin moonlight, showing the law as it had been written before. Wartime fear taught men to widen every noose. Intent required before death sentence. Margot stood behind her guarded cell door and watched the words reach him too late. Edric Solm watched them too, calm, as a man measuring which bridge would hold after the first one burned. "The original law remains honored," he said. "Emergency revision did not erase intent, Majesty. It clarified how intent may be proven when conspiracy hides its hand." Theobald did not look away from the parchment. By association? By association with treasonous houses, forbidden correspondence, supply aid, and shelter. Margot's voice came from behind the bars. "Association is not intent, it is a net." Edric turned to her with controlled patience. "A useful net during war. For catching the poor," she said. "The wealthy call theirs family loyalty." A prisoner somewhere down the corridor made a sound too small to be called agreement. Theobald heard it. He closed the old law case with care. "Bring the emergency revision." Edric inclined his head. "It is already before you in the execution packet." "I want the drafting copy." The warden's eyes narrowed by a fraction. "Drafting copies are internal. So are mistakes before they become executions." Margot looked at him then. Not with gratitude. Gratitude would have been indecent, while her keys still hung from Edric's belt. Edric followed her gaze and touched the iron ring lightly. Keeper Fenley's authority remained suspended. Theobald's voice was cold. No one returned it. "No," Margot said, "but you both keep speaking as if my silence came with the keys." The moon iron link across her cell door glimmered once. Edric ignored it. "Majesty, delaying dawn over copied language risks appearing weak to every faction still testing your crown." Theobald finally looked at him. "My crown will survive reading what it signed." The guard returned, with a thinner packet, bound in grey cord. Unlike the old law, this one smelled of fresh wax and hurry. Its crown seal sat deep in the parchment, pressed so hard the back was bruised. Margot stepped closer to the bars. "Ask why the crown seal bites only the copy." Edric answered before Theobald could. Emergency seals are made under pressure. So are confessions, she said. That does not make them true. Theobald opened the packet. The first page matched the old law closely. Too closely. The language had been copied with careful reverence, as if respectability could hide the hand that changed one line. Then he found the revision. His eyes stopped. Edric spoke softly. The association clause was necessary after the border conspiracy. Traitors no longer announce intent with banners. They use kitchens, wagons, letters, cousins, widows, clerks. Margot looked across the corridor at the condemned scribe. And old men who copy letters they cannot read. If they copy treason, they serve treason. No, Margot said. If you no longer need intent, any hand near paper can be made guilty. Theobald's thumb pressed against the revision line. Was the first hand amended? The legal clerk beside him swallowed. Majesty, the original law. Was the first hand amended before this copy was sealed? The clerk looked at Edric. That was answer enough to make the corridor colder. Theobald turned his head slowly. Do you answer the crown, or the man who schedules dawn? The clerk went pale. No first-hand amendment is entered in the upper vault. Edric's voice remained even. Emergency law does not always alter the original hand. It supplements it by royal seal. Who drafted the supplement? The prison legal office prepared language under wartime authority. Whose wartime authority? Blackbarrow's. Margot laughed without warmth. A prison now writes death law for the kingdom? Edric looked at her. A prison understands treason more intimately than court poets. A prison understands what happens when the poor cannot buy better words. Theobald lifted the copied revision closer to the moonlight. Were the 6 condemned by proven intent or by association? Silence. This time even Edric did not answer quickly. The moon iron chains around the 6 execution records began to drag against stone. Not opening, not freeing, only refusing to lie quietly. Edric said, their associations established intent under the emergency standard. Margot closed her eyes once. There it was. The sentence that had almost killed 6 people before breakfast. She opened them. Ask who entered that line. Theobald turned the page over. At the bottom of the revision, beneath the pressed crown seal, a smaller mark had been hidden in the fold. Not bright, not theatrical, only a warden's office stamp, dark against the crease. The moon iron link on Margot's cell door rang once. Theobald read the mark aloud. Entered through Blackbarrow Warden Authority. Edric did not move. The 6 execution records shuddered inside their empty cells. The copied revision darkened around the added clause, and the ink surfaced cleanly beneath the moon. Altered treason revision. Association line added under Warden Solm's seal. Edric did not deny his seal lay beneath the association line. He denied that a seal made revision unlawful. A warden's seal proves entry, Majesty, he said, voice steady in the lower east block. Not fraud, not treason, not murder by ink. Margot stood behind the moon iron link guarding her cell door, watching Theobald hold the copied revision as if parchment had grown teeth. Theobald's face gave little away. That had always been his strength. Tonight, it was beginning to look like cowardice wearing discipline. Edric turned slightly, letting the guards, clerks, and condemned prisoners hear every word. Wartime conspiracy required broader standards. Intent is difficult to prove when traitors hide behind kitchens, wagons, family errands, and harmless letters. Margot answered from behind the bars. Then prove intent better. Do not make innocence easier to hang. A guard near the stair looked down. Edric saw it, and moved at once. This is why Keeper Fenley was removed. She sentimentalizes prisoners until law becomes feeling. Margot's laugh was quiet. I have locked more doors in Blackbarrow than you have opened honestly. The words moved through the corridor more sharply than a shout would have. Every prisoner there knew the difference between a keeper who enjoyed locks and a keeper who understood them. Margot had never made kindness out of keys. She had made order. She had made limits. She had made sure that when Blackbarrow closed its doors, it did not pretend hunger, poverty, and fear were the same as guilt. Theobald looked at her. For one breath, memory passed between them. Margot standing in the prison yard after a winter riot, face bruised, keys in hand, refusing to let guards beat men already chained. Theobald had trusted her then because her conscience had protected his crown from cruelty. Now that same conscience had embarrassed him. Edric bowed toward the king. Majesty, if the court sees you halt executions because a jailed keeper questions emergency language, every faction will learn that royal law can be delayed by disobedience. Theobald's eyes moved to the 6 cracked execution cells. Royal law can be delayed by law. The words were right. They arrived late. Margot did not thank him. Theobald turned to the legal clerk. Who authorized sentence review after execution? The clerk went pale. Edric answered smoothly. Post. Execution review is standard during active security threat. It prevents rescue attempts and witness tampering before sentence is carried out. Margot stepped closer to the bars. A review after death is not review. It is decoration. Edric's expression hardened by a hair. Dead traitors cannot escape. Dead innocents cannot be restored. Silence struck the corridor. The condemned seamstress across from Margot pressed both hands over her mouth. The sound she made was small, almost swallowed, but it reached every person who had been trying to hide behind procedure. Theobald heard it. He looked at the woman, then at Edric. Bring the sentence review order. Edric's tone remained respectful. Majesty, the execution packet already contains sufficient authority. I asked for the review order. It is filed in the death door office. Then open it. Edric's pause was almost nothing. But Margot had spent 14 years reading pauses before violence. A man could swing a fist with his face calm. A clerk could move a sentence with one clean hesitation. Edric's smallest silences had always been where the blade lived. Theobald saw this one too. The moon iron chains around the 6 records dragged once against the stones. Edric used the waiting. Majesty, Blackbarrow cannot become a theatre. The condemned are watching, so are the guards. If you permit Keeper Fenley to direct inquiry from a cell, you weaken every command you give after tonight. Margot looked at Theobald. Ask why I was denied the original law 3 times. Edric turned sharply. Because you had no authority to challenge royal revision. I had the death door key, Margot said. That was authority enough to refuse a dirty record. Theobald's gaze dropped briefly to Edric's belt, where Margot's iron key ring still hung. He did not order it returned. Good. Let the absence keep accusing him. The guard returned with a narrow black folder, sealed in grey wax. The wax carried the mark of the death door office, not the crown. Theobald took it. Edric said, Those are scheduling papers, Majesty, not guilt. Then they should be easy to read. Theobald broke the seal. Inside lay a clean sheet, too clean for a prison that sweated damp into every corner. 6 names, 6 execution times, 6 sentence reviews. Margot did not need to see the lower line to know. She had heard it in Edric's confidence. She had heard it in the way he spoke of Dawn as if time itself belonged to him. She had heard it when he said dead traitors could not escape, as though death were merely a lock no prisoner had ever picked. Theobald read silently at first. Then his jaw tightened. Edric spoke before anyone asked. Review after execution is procedural in treason emergency. Theobald looked up. Who ordered it? The death door office. Under whose authority? Blackbarrow scheduling authority. Margot said, Ask whose seal? Theobald turned the page. At the bottom, beneath the review schedule, was the same warden's office seal. Edric did not flinch. My seal appears because I oversee prison scheduling. No, Margot said. Your seal appears wherever death needed paperwork clean enough to pass before dawn. The moon iron link on her cell door brightened. Theobald lifted the review order toward the moonlight spilling through the corridor grate. The ink darkened along one line, plain and merciless. Sentence review order. Review scheduled for second bell after dawn execution. Edric did not deny the review had been scheduled after dawn. He denied the timing made the sentences false. Scheduling protects the crown from rescue attempts, Majesty, he said, while the review order lay open in Theobald's hand. It does not prove the condemned lacked guilt. Margot stood behind her barred door, the moon iron link still bright across the threshold. It held her in. It held their lie out. Theobald lowered the review order slowly. You scheduled review after death. I scheduled review after risk. A seamstress was your risk. Edric's gaze moved to the woman across the corridor. Small hands often carry large treason. The seamstress flinched, as if the sentence had touched her throat. Margot's voice cut through the corridor. Ask whose large hands were spared. Edric turned toward her. Keeper Fenley continues to confuse pity with law. No, she said. I am asking whether your law climbs stairs. Theobald looked at her. She did not explain. He understood enough to turn back to Edric. Were noble houses charged under the same association clause? Edric's answer came too smoothly. Noble cases are handled by royal council. Blackbarrow receives those already sentenced to prison custody. That is not an answer. It is jurisdiction. Margot almost smiled. A beautiful word for a locked door. Theobald handed the review order to the clerk. Bring the association charge list for the 6. Edric's brows lifted slightly. Majesty, we have already reviewed the execution records. I asked for the charge list. The charge list will show only Blackbarrow matters. Then it should be easy to read. The same phrase returned to the corridor like a blade learning its path. A guard went up the stairs. Edric waited until his footsteps faded. If you let this continue, Majesty, every convicted traitor will learn to stand beside a sympathetic woman and call himself poor. Margot's hands closed around the bars. Poverty did not make them innocent. Your paperwork tried to make poverty enough for death. Edric's expression remained mild. And your pride made 6 prisoners into banners. No, Margot said. Your schedule made them corpses before review. Theobald's eyes flicked toward her. Not with anger this time. With something heavier. Guilt, perhaps. Not useful yet. Guilt could still sit down and call itself sorrow. Action had to stand. He turned to the condemned scribe. Did any witness testify that you intended treason? The old man lifted his head. Chains trembled at his wrists, but did not tighten. No, Majesty. I copied what was placed before me. I was paid 2 copper bits. I cannot read court script. Edric said, ignorance does not cleanse service. Theobald turned to the carter. And you? The carter swallowed. I carried grain to a border house. Soldiers stopped me after. I had a receipt. Did you know the house was charged? No, Majesty. Edric spoke calmly. Supply aid sustains treason even when the hand that carries it claims innocence. Margot looked at him. Convenient. The hand that carries grain dies. The house that ordered it waits for counsel. A sound moved through the guards. Not rebellion. Recognition. Edric heard it and turned his body just enough to command the corridor again. This is sentimental theater. The question is not whether these prisoners seem small. Conspiracy often survives by using small people, Margot said. Then ask why no great person stands beside them. The guard returned with a bound list stamped by the death door office. Its edges were damp, as if it had been stored near the lower drains instead of the legal vault. Theobald took it. Edric's mouth stayed calm. His eyes did not. Margot saw the difference. Theobald broke the cord. The first page named the 6 condemned. Beside each name was the association basis. Service, delivery, copying, shelter, kinship, household labor. Not intent. Not command. Not proof of plotted harm. Association. Theobald read the list once. Then again. Where are the houses? He asked. Edric inclined his head. Which houses? The treasonous houses these associations supposedly served. Those matters sit outside Blackbarrow's immediate death docket. Were they charged under the same clause? Noble proceedings require counsel review. Before execution? Edric paused. Margot heard the lock turn inside the silence. Theobald did too. Before execution? He repeated. Edric's voice stayed even. Noble cases are not processed through the death door without counsel confirmation. The seamstress gave a broken laugh, tiny and terrible. Theobald looked at her. She whispered, My brother served in their kitchen. No one moved. The moon iron chains did not explode into judgment. They did not tear doors from hinges or drag Edric to his knees. They only made the corridor feel colder. Because sometimes the truth needed no spectacle. Margot said, Ask whether any noble house was named under the same line. Theobald turned the page. Then the next. Then the next. The list was careful, complete, brutal in its cleanliness. It named servants, carriers, copyists, widows, kin, laborers. It did not name one lord, one lady, one heir, or one house with enough soldiers to make the crown hesitate. Theobald lifted the list toward the moonlight. The ink darkened around the column of accused associations. At the bottom, a blank section waited beneath the heading for noble charges. Blanc, not forgotten, preserved. The moon iron link on Margot's door rang once. Theobald read the lower notation, voice quiet enough that everyone leaned in to hear it. Association charge list. No noble house named. The blank section did what shouting could not. It made every name on the page feel chosen. Not by guilt, by convenience. Edric Solm looked at the empty noble column and did not blink. A blank section is jurisdiction, Majesty, not mercy. Theobald held the association charge list beneath the corridor moonlight. No noble house named under the same clause. Noble proceedings require council review. And these 6 required Dawn? Blackbarrow holds those already transferred for execution. Margot's voice came from behind the bars. Ask who decided they were ready for death before the others were ready for questions. Edric turned to her with restrained irritation. Keeper Fenley is assuming different procedure means unequal justice. No, Margot said. I am saying unequal justice always arrives wearing procedure. The condemned seamstress had stopped crying. That was worse. Her face had gone still, as if she had learned grief could be dangerous if it made noise. Theobald noticed. His hand tightened around the list. Bring the noble review docket. The legal clerk hesitated. Majesty, those records may be under council protection. Theobald looked at him. Are we in a prison or a chapel? A prison, Majesty. Then stop whispering like the paper is holy. A guard ran for the upper records room. Edric used the delay with the patience of a man who trusted architecture. Majesty, noble review exists because noble houses command soldiers, lands, and obligations. Mishandling one case can fracture border alliances. A seamstress's brother and a lord's heir cannot be processed alike. Margot's fingers curled around the bars. There it is. Edric looked at her. The sentence you dress is order, she said. Small people are safe to kill quickly. Great people must be handled carefully. A low sound passed through the prisoners. Edric faced the corridor. Do not mistake careful governance for cruelty. Treason spreads through every class, but consequences must be managed according to threat. Theobald's eyes did not leave him. And the threat of a poor prisoner? Escape. Riot. Symbol. Margot said, No, the threat of a poor prisoner is that no one important has to answer for them. The moon iron link on her cell door gave a low, silver hum. Not loud, just enough to make the torches bend toward blue. Theobald looked at the link, then at Margot. Did you ask for Noble Association records before tonight? Twice. Edric answered first. She had no authority. Margot smiled without warmth. I had a key to the death door. You keep forgetting that responsibility is authority when blood is waiting. Theobald absorbed that. Badly. His face hardened, not against her, but against what she had placed in front of him. The guard returned with a red docket bound by black cord. Unlike the damp death door list, this one was dry, clean, and carried no cellar smell. Someone had kept it far from the lower prison. Theobald took it. Edric's expression remained composed. Margot noticed his thumb press once against the side of his own glove. Only once. Theobald broke the cord. Inside were names written in a careful court hand. House Merrow, House Vant, House Caramere, House Elsin. Everyone tied to the same border conspiracy language Edric had used to condemn the 6. Shelter, correspondence, supply aid, kinship, household service. But none bore a dawn mark. None bore a death door transfer. None had been placed in Lower East. Theobald turned a page. Then another. Each noble case carried the same notation. Held for council review. Held for council review. Held for council review. Margot looked past him to Edric. Before execution? Edric's voice stayed smooth. Council review is the proper forum for noble liability. And death door is the proper forum for servants. For those sentenced under Blackbarrow custody. Theobald looked up. Were any noble association cases scheduled before dawn? No, Majesty. The answer was immediate. Too immediate. Theobald heard it. So the association clause sent servants, carriers, copyists, and kin to death before review, he said, while noble houses under the same language waited for counsel. Edric inclined his head, because their cases were not procedurally identical. Margot said, their danger was identical, their names were not. The seamstress across the corridor whispered, House Merrow. Theobald turned to her. She swallowed. My brother worked in House Merrow's kitchen. The docket rustled in Theobald's hand. He found the name. House Merrow sat safely on the page. held for council review. The seamstress's brother had become association. The house had become procedure. Theobald went very still. Margot did not cut it. Edric said, "Selection orders are separate scheduling instruments." Theobald looked at him. "Bring them." Maestro. Now, for the first time, Edric did not answer at once. The moon-iron chains around the 6 records dragged softly against stone. The guard who had fetched the docket looked toward Edric before moving. Theobald saw that too. "Do not look at him," the king said. "Look at me." The guard fled. Edric folded his hands before him. "Majesty, delay beyond dawn will signal instability." Theobald's voice lowered. "Dawn will wait." Margot closed her eyes once. Not relief, not forgiveness. Only the first small sound of a blade being pulled away from a throat. The guard returned with a narrow strip of black parchment sealed in death door wax. Theobald opened it beneath the moon. 6 low-born names stood at the top. Below them, in smaller writing, sat the noble docket numbers to be deferred. The ink darkened along the final line. Noble review docket. Association cases held until after dawn. Dawn did not wait quietly. It pressed pale light through the corridor grates and found Blackbarrow still awake, still breathing, still holding 6 lives in the space between order and murder. Theobald stood with the noble docket in one hand and the black selection strip in the other. 6 low-born names at the top. Noble cases held until after dawn. Margot remained behind bars. Edric remained with her keys. Nothing about justice had been corrected yet, only exposed. Theobald looked toward the condemned prisoners. "The dawn executions are suspended." A sound moved through the Lower East block. Not cheering. No one trusted relief that arrived without paperwork. Edric bowed his head. "Suspended pending what authority, Majesty?" "My authority." "Of course." Edric's tone stayed smooth. "But the death door schedule remains entered. Suspension without protective order leaves the condemned in active death custody." Margot's fingers tightened around the bars. There it was again. The trap beneath the mercy. Theobald heard it too, but later than she did. "Explain." "If execution is delayed but sentence remains active, the prisoners may be transferred, isolated, or restored to the death passage when emergency risk returns." Edric glanced toward Margot. "Especially if the source of delay is found procedurally unsound." Margot laughed once. "You built a door that swings both ways." Edric looked almost offended. "I built nothing. I enforce custody. You enforce gaps." Theobald turned to the guards. "Open Keeper Fenley's cell." Every head in the corridor shifted. Margot did not move. Edric's hand went to the keys at his belt. "Majesty?" "She will stand as witness while we draft suspension." "No," Margot said. The word struck harder than a plea would have. Theobald looked at her. "No? You do not get to unlock me for your comfort while they remain legally exposed." "I am not doing this for comfort." "No," she said. "You are doing it because it is easier to face me outside a cage than admit you put me in one before reading the law." His expression tightened. "Good. Let it hurt where it belonged." Theobald's voice dropped. "Margot, this corridor is no longer safe. It was not safe when you gave Edric my keys." Edric said softly, "Majesty, this is exactly the danger. She turns lawful correction into personal grievance." Margot did not look at him. "Ask whether suspension protects them from rearrest." Theobald's eyes shifted back to Edric. Edric answered before the question fully formed. "Suspension delays execution. It does not vacate sentence. Can they be rearrested under the same association clause if removed from death custody? They are already in custody. If I order them moved out of Lower East?" Edric paused. "Small. Perfect." Theobald saw it. Margot said, "There." Edric's calm returned. "Transfer without conviction review would create administrative instability. The proper path is to hold them until full review." "After dawn?" Margot asked. "After danger passes." "The danger is your paperwork." One of the guards crossed to Margot's cell with the key ring. Edric had not handed it over willingly. Theobald had taken it from his belt without ceremony. The sound of Margot's keys in Theobald's hand made something old twist in her chest. He had the weight now. He did not yet understand it. Theobald selected the Lower East key and placed it in the lock. The moon iron link across the door did not move. He turned the key. The lock refused. A low silver note traveled through the corridor. Theobald tried again. Nothing. Edric's voice sharpened, still controlled. The prison resists interference because the death sequence has been disturbed. Margot shook her head. No, it resists correction without protection. Theobald looked through the bars at her. For the first time since he had sentenced her, he did not look like a king deciding whether to believe her. He looked like a man realizing belief was too small to repair what he had done. What protection? He asked. Written stay of execution, removal from death custody, no rearrest under association clause without proven intent reviewed in first hand. Edric's eyes cooled. She is dictating royal law from a cell. No, Margot said. I am naming the hole you will push them through if he lets you. Theobald turned to the clerk. Write it. The clerk froze. Majesty, such a protection order requires formal phrasing. Then use formal phrasing. Edric stepped in lightly. A stay may be drafted, but no prisoner should leave death custody until the court reviews risk. Margot looked at the seamstress, the carter, the old scribe, and the three others still waiting beyond the bend of the corridor. No one asked to leave. They asked not to be killed before review. The seamstress whispered, Please. It was not dramatic. That made it worse. The clerk knelt on a ledger board and began writing. His hand shook through the first line. Theobald watched every word. Stay of execution for 6 named prisoners. Removal from death custody pending conviction. Review. No immediate rearrest under association standard without proven intent entered. Margot listened until the last line existed. Only then did she breathe fully. Theobald signed first. Then he held the quill toward Edric. The warden smiled without warmth. My seal is not needed. Margot said, It was needed everywhere death wanted speed. The moon iron chains around the 6 records tightened once. Edric took the quill. His signature remained elegant. Theobald pressed the royal seal beneath it. The cell door unlocked with a soft iron sigh. Margot did not step out. Theobald looked at her. You can leave now. No, she said. The corridor went still again. Margot's gaze moved to the 6 condemned prisoners. I will not leave this cell while they remain in chains that still answer to dirty records. The moon iron link across her threshold lowered, not opening the world, only showing that the choice was now hers. Theobald held her keys in his hand. For once, he did not offer them too soon. Margot looked at the protection order in the clerk's trembling grip. The ink darkened beneath the moonlight. Legal protection order. No execution, transfer, or rearrest without proven intent review. The royal seal did not make anyone safe until power changed hands. Margot knew that. So did Edric. That was why the warden looked least troubled after signing the protection order. Paper could be delayed, filed wrongly, misplaced under threat procedure. A prisoner could be protected in one corridor and ruined in another before the ink dried. Theobald held the signed order beneath the moonlight, watching the words darken into witness. No execution, transfer, or rearrest without proven intent review. Then he looked at Edric. Surrender the death door keys. For the first time that night, the corridor did not breathe. Edric's face remained composed. Majesty, you heard me. My office oversees all death door custody. Not anymore. A guard shifted near the wall. Another looked at Edric out of habit, then caught himself and faced the king. Margot saw it. Theobald did too. His voice lowered. Every guard who looks to Warden Solm before obeying the crown will leave Blackbarrow before sunrise. The habit broke like thin ice. Edric's gloved hand moved to the ring at his belt, not Margot's iron keeper keys. A separate ring, blackened and narrow, used for death door filings, transfer gates, witness drawers, and execution record cages. He removed it slowly. This will create disorder, he said. No, Margot answered from her cell. It will reveal who depended on disorder, being called order. Theobald did not look at her, but the words struck him. Captain Rusk. A grey-haired prison captain stepped forward. Majesty. You will hold the death door office under royal watch. No record leaves, burns, transfers, or receives added notation without my seal and a second witness. Edric inclined his head. Captain Rusk reports to my office. Not tonight. Then to whom? Theobald turned at last toward Margot's cell. For one dangerous heartbeat, She thought he might offer her authority back too soon. He did not. Good. A repaired door was not the same as a returned key. To the law, Theobald said, and to every witness old law still recognizes. The moon iron link at Margot's threshold gave a low silver hum. Edric's mouth softened as if he pitied the king. Relics cannot administer prisons. No, Margot said, but they can expose when men administer them falsely. Theobald handed Captain Rusk the death door keys. Open the 6 conviction records under moon iron witness. Edric's eyes chilled. Those records contain sealed testimony. Then the seal can stand in moonlight. The 6 execution cells were opened one by one. No prisoner stepped out. The protection order had stopped death, not freed bodies. The seamstress, the carter, the old scribe, and the others still sat in chains, watching officials handle papers that had almost become their graves. Margot stayed inside her cell because she had chosen to. Theobald stood where she could see his hands. It mattered. He did not let clerks carry the records away. He did not permit Edric to summarize. He did not let procedure hide in another room. He opened the first record in the corridor, where the condemned could hear what had been written over their lives. Name, he said. The clerk swallowed. Lysa Bellwood. Seamstress. The seamstress flinched. Conviction basis. Household service to House Merrow through her brother. Witness to intent. The clerk turned the page. Then another. Silence grew. Edric spoke quietly. Intent inferred through service chain. Theobald did not look at him. I asked the record. The clerk's voice thinned. No direct witness to intent entered. The moon iron chain around the record loosened once, then tightened harder around the false conclusion. Not enough to free. Enough to accuse the paper. Theobald opened the second record. Name. Jory Vale. Carter. Conviction basis. Supply delivery to charged border estate. Witness to intent? The clerk searched. No direct witness entered. The carter bent forward until his forehead touched his chained hands. Margot's throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. Do not make his relief a pardon. He should never have needed mercy for a charge without proof. Theobald looked at her then. The words hurt him. Good. He needed pain that taught accuracy. He opened the third record. Name. Orvin Pell. Scribe. The old man lifted his head. Conviction basis. Copying. Prohibited correspondence. Witness to intent. The clerk hesitated. Edric said, a scribe's profession is comprehension. Margot snapped. Not if the script is court cipher, and his wage was 2 copper bits. Theobald's hand tightened over the parchment. Witness. The clerk whispered. No direct witness entered. One by one, the 6 records yielded the same absence. Service. Delivery. Copying. Kinship. Shelter. Labor. Not proven intent. No first-hand admission. No witness who had seen a chosen betrayal. Only association made sharp enough to cut poor throats. Theobald finished the 6th record with a face carved from restraint. Then he turned to Edric. You sent 6 people to Dawn without one entered witness of intent. Edric did not retreat. Under emergency association standard, their proximity established risk. Risk is not a death sentence. In peacetime, perhaps. Margot's voice was quiet. No, in-law. Theobald accepted that one without defending himself. Not forgiven. Not healed, but accepted. He looked at Captain Rusk. Until full court review, Warden Solm is removed from death door custody, execution scheduling, and conviction record access. Edric bowed. Perfectly. Understood, Majesty. That obedience was more frightening than protest. Margot knew it. Theobald was beginning to. He turned to her cell, holding none of her keys now. I will not ask you to trust me tonight. Good, she said. Trust is not opened by the same hand that locked it. His eyes lowered once, then rose. No, he said. It is earned by what that hand does next. The moon iron chains around the 6 records went still. Not satisfied. Waiting. Captain Rusk opened the final witness drawer under the death door desk. A thin ledger slid forward, untouched by dust. On its cover, in Edric's neat hand, was written, Death Door Custody Exceptions. The ledger was too clean for something found beneath a death door desk. That was Margot's first thought. Not old, not forgotten, not buried under the honest dust of unused records. Death Door Custody Exceptions. Theobald read the title once. Then again, as if repetition might make it less ugly. Edric stood 3 steps away, hands folded, face calm. Administrative exceptions, Majesty. Every prison keeps them. Margot's fingers rested on the bars of her cell. Then read them where the prisoners can hear. Edric looked at her. Exceptions involve protected proceedings. Death involved public obedience, she said. Let protection be just as loud. Theobald opened the ledger. The first page listed noble association cases already shown in the red docket. House Merrow, House Vant, House Caramere, House Elsin. Beside each name sat a notation in Edric's precise hand. Held from Death Door custody. Council review pending. No lower cell transfer. Theobald turned the page. More names. Not all noble. Some were merchants with court contracts. Some were cousins of officers. Some were sons of men who loaned horses to the border campaign. All tied to the same association language that had almost killed a seamstress, a carter, a scribe, and 3 others before breakfast. Edric spoke smoothly. Custody exceptions prevent political disorder while review is pending. Margot's voice stayed quiet, and the poor create no disorder when they die. A guard swallowed. Theobald's eyes moved down the ledger. Who approved these exceptions? The Death Door office entered them under emergency discretion. Under your discretion. Under my office. That was not my question. Edric gave the smallest bow. Yes, Majesty, under mine. The moon iron chains around the 6 conviction records did not move. Margot was glad. She wanted no miracle to interrupt the sound of Edric admitting power in plain language. Theobald turned another page. His jaw tightened. What is this column? The legal clerk leaned closer, then recoiled as if the ink smelled. Replacement custody. The seamstress lifted her head. Margot did not breathe. Theobald read the first line. House Merrow associate held from Death Door custody. Replacement transfer. Lysa Bellwood. The seamstress made no sound. That was worse than weeping. Theobald turned to the next. Caramere supply associate held. Replacement transfer. Jory Vale. The carter's chains rattled once. Vant correspondence associate held. Replacement transfer. Orvan Pell. The old scribe closed his eyes. One by one, the ledger paired protected names with low-born bodies, not declared innocent, not declared guilty, merely moved, shifted, substituted, under the clean language of custody management. Margot's voice came thin with anger. They were not only condemned by association, they were chosen to stand where protected names had been removed. Edric answered without shame. The death docket required representative custody under emergency threat. Representative death, she said. No execution had occurred. Because I refused the door. The words landed. No one challenged them. Theobald looked at the ledger as though it had finally become heavier than his crown. You used unproven prisoners to preserve the appearance of enforcement. Edric's calm sharpened. I preserved stability. Noble arrests without council review would have fractured alliances before dawn. The kingdom cannot survive if every house believes the crown will drag its heirs into Blackbarrow on a prison keeper's suspicion. Margot stepped close enough that the moon iron link touched the sleeve of her dress. But it can survive dragging servants. Edric looked at her. Servants can also betray. Yes, she said, and lords can also hang. The corridor went still. Theobald closed the ledger, not enough to hide it, only enough to stop his own hand from shaking. Then he looked at Captain Rusk. Every prisoner named as replacement custody receives the same protection order. No execution, no transfer, no rearrest under association standard without proven intent review. Captain Rusk bowed. Majesty. Edric said, that will empty the death docket. Then the death docket was full of rot. Margot heard the words. They mattered. They were not enough. Theobald turned toward her cell, with her iron keys now hanging from Captain Rusk's hand, not Edric's. Margot, he said. She hated the softness in his voice, because part of her still remembered when it had meant safety. He took the keys from Rusk and held them through the bars. Not forcing. Offering, I should not have taken these from you. No, she said. You should not have believed they were yours to use as punishment. His hand stiller. Good. She wanted the correction to wound him cleanly. "I can open the door," he said. "You can," Margot answered, "but I will not step out because my cell became inconvenient to your guilt." Theobald lowered the keys. "I am not asking forgiveness." "Then ask better." He looked at her. Margot's gaze moved to the condemned, then to the ledger, then to the death door passage beyond the corridor bend. "Ask what happens to every prisoner already processed under the association line. Ask how many replacement names filled protected spaces. Ask who paid to become an exception without calling it pardon." Edric's face did not change. That was how Margot knew she had touched the buried door. The moon iron link across her threshold rang softly. Theobald turned. "Open the full exception archive," he said. Edric's voice remained level. "There is no full archive." The corridor torches bent blue. From somewhere beneath the death door office, hidden metal began to drag across stone. Not a chain. A locked drawer. Captain Rusk looked toward the stairwell. "Majesty." The sound came again, louder. Something below Blackbarrow was trying to come up. The locked drawer came up through Blackbarrow like a buried confession learning to breathe. It scraped beneath the death door office first. Then, through the stairwell. Then, into the lower east corridor, dragged by 3 thin moon iron chains that had not moved in any keeper's lifetime. No guard touched it. No clerk claimed it. Edric Solm watched the drawer arrive with the same calm he had worn all night. Only his silence changed. It became careful. Margot remained behind her cell door as the drawer stopped before Theobald's boots. The iron lock on its face carried no crown mark, no prison inventory mark, no legal office number. Only Edric's private seal. Theobald looked at him. "Open it." Edric's voice was quiet. "Private administrative records are not subject to moon iron witness," Margot said. "Then they should not have hidden under the death door." Theobald held out his hand. "Key. I do not carry it." The moon iron chain tightened once around the drawer. The lock split. Inside lay a narrow ledger, bound in dark blue leather, clean at the edges, handled often. The title had been scratched away, but not deeply enough. "Pardon transfers." Theobald opened the book. The first pages were names. Not the condemned 6. Not the noble houses already seen. Names of sons, nephews, cousins, creditors, officers' wives, merchants with royal contracts. Beside each name sat a fee, a favor, or a land promise. Then a notation in Edric's hand. "Removed from death door exposure. Substitute custody entered. Counsel delay granted." Theobald turned page after page. The prison listened. Even the torches seemed afraid to crackle. Edric spoke at last. "Those are negotiated security settlements." Margot's laugh was soft and terrible. "You sold fear back to the people rich enough to buy it. I preserved order. You priced mercy." Theobald lifted the ledger higher and replaced them with prisoners who had no protection. Edric's face stayed smooth. "Majesty, every name transferred to death custody carried legal association. Not provenanton. Emergency standard allowed." "No." Theobald's voice struck the corridor like a door barred from within. "I allowed emergency authority. You built a market under it." For the first time, Edric did not answer. The moon iron chains dragged the drawer backward. Not toward Margot, toward the yard. The prison began to move with it. Guards carried the 6 conviction records. Clerks carried the old law, the copied revision, the review order, the association charge list, the noble docket, and the pardon ledger. The condemned were brought in chains, but no longer toward the death passage. Margot's cell opened only when Captain Rusk placed the protection order in her hands. Not Theobald. Not Edric. The prison itself lowered the silver link from her threshold. Margot stepped out slowly. She did not take her keys yet. She walked behind the prisoners into the central yard where dawn had finally touched the stones, the same yard where Theobald had condemned her. Now every barred gallery was full. Soldiers stood without knowing where to look. Edric was brought to the center, unshackled at first, because men like him always believed disgrace should arrive with formal notice. Theobald faced the prison. "I signed what I had not read," he said. A murmur moved through Blackbarrow. Margot went still. He did not look at her for rescue. "Good. Let truth stand without borrowing her strength. I accepted a revised law without demanding the first hand. I punished the keeper who warned me. I allowed royal authority to be used where justice had not been proven. Edric's expression sharpened. Majesty, confession before prisoners invites disorder. Theobald turned to him. No. Hiding murder behind order invited this. Captain Rusk opened the pardon ledger beneath the moon's last pale light. The moon iron chains dropped from the walls. Not all of them. Only those fastened to the 6 condemned. One by one, the links fell from wrists, ankles, and throats, striking the yardstones like bells with no music left in them. The seamstress covered her face. The carter sank to his knees. The old scribe stared at his empty hands as if he had forgotten they belonged to him. Margot did not smile. Freedom that came within 1 hour of death was not joy first. It was shock. It was breath returning to a body that had already prepared to leave. Theobald turned to Captain Rusk. By royal order, the 6 are removed from death custody. Their convictions under association standard are suspended until proven intent is reviewed under the original law. Edric said, suspended is not innocent. Margot looked at him, and condemned was not guilty. The yard heard that. The moon iron chains heard it too. The private pardon ledger snapped shut by itself. A chain rose from the execution arch, crossed the yard, and locked around Edric Solm's wrists. He looked down, then up at Theobald. Majesty. Theobald's face held no triumph. Warden Edric Solm, you are removed from Blackbarrow authority pending trial under first-hand law, moon iron witness, and public record. Edric's eyes moved to Margot. Not pleading, measuring. You think this makes her loyal to you? Theobald answered before Margot could. No, that is not mine to make. The words changed the yard more than any chain had. Slowly, Captain Rusk approached Margot with her iron keys. He held them out with both hands. The prison requires a keeper, he said. Margot looked at the keys. 14 years of wait, 1 night of insult, 6 lives nearly spent, because men had mistaken obedience for cleanliness. She took the ring. Every chain in Blackbarrow answered with one low silver sound. Not command. Recognition. Theobald stepped closer, stopping beyond arm's reach. Keeper Fenley. From this dawn forward, no death door order opens without first-hand law, proven intent, and keeper conscience entered beside the royal seal. Margot looked at him. My conscience is not an ornament for your seal. No, he said, it is a limit on it. That was better. Not enough for forgiveness. Enough for the first stone of repair. The prisoners watched her. The guards watched her. The king watched her without asking to be absolved. Margot turned to the 6 freed prisoners. You will eat before you answer another question. You will be given counsel before any review. And no one will put chains on you today for surviving what the law did wrong. The seamstress began to cry then. So did 2 guards who tried to hide it. Theobald's voice lowered beside Margot. And after today, she looked toward the death door. Closed now. Waiting for a cleaner kingdom, or no kingdom at all. After today, Margot said, you keep reading what you sign. His eyes met hers. I will. And when I say stop, you will not need to say it twice. The answer was not romance. Not yet. It was something harder to fake. A vow with work inside it. Margot walked across the yard with her keys at her side. No longer prisoner, not softened, not crowned by anyone's regret. Behind her, the moon iron chains lifted from the 6 broken records and wrapped around the pardon ledger instead. The old death door remained shut. And for the first time in Blackbarrow's long, hungry history, dawn passed without taking the innocent because a woman had refused to make injustice clean.